Hi there. It's October 21st, and we're bringing to a conclusion our progress through Paul's first letter to Timothy. And we're reading today chapter 6, the whole chapter from verses 1 through to verse 21. So Paul commences here in this chapter with an exhortation to slaves not to disrespect their owners, their masters, especially if their masters are believers. This is a very interesting situation for us because obviously slavery has been abolished, or we're seeking to completely wipe it out of the earth. But in the situation Paul is writing to, he's writing to slaves who have actually become believers and they're following Jesus even though they are still slaves. And so he's exhorting them to live in peace, in service, because this is the sign of a godly heart, a heart that lives in service, and not to despise their masters, and particularly if they are believers, because they are brothers. Again, very unusual understanding for us, but very much part of the age in which Paul is living. He then also encourages Timothy to teach the things that Paul has been imparting, to teach these and to avoid those things which are what he calls hetero-teaching, teaching other things, teaching differently, because these things are just leading to arguments and disputes, and this is not what God wants. God wants peace, God wants unity, he wants harmony. And he says that those who do these things, those who have this heterodidascalia, this other teaching, hetero teaching, are actually taking people off into depravity, and they've lost their minds, he said. They've gone off the rails. And then Paul has something to say about money and about riches and about possessions. And he says, actually, those who want to go after gain are going after the wrong things. Those who are going after riches are going to make shipwreck of their faith, because the best thing, and Paul has this wonderful statement, godliness with contentment is great gain. That if we have an anchor into God, if we look to him, and if we are content with what we have, then we will be really in a good place. Then we will be really, truly rich. It's not about having many possessions. He says people who want to be rich fall into temptation. And he says that the love of money, philoagiria is what he calls it in Greek, the love of money, is the root of all evil. It's not money itself that is the root of all evil, but it's the desire, the lust for money, which pushes people into ungodliness and into disobeying God. And then Paul goes on to address Timothy personally, and he says, Timothy, just flee from all this stuff, flee from all this wrong teaching, this love of money, from the pursuit of riches. Run away from all that, and actually instead fight the good fight of faith, which is also about justice, about faith, about love, about patience. And Paul gives him a charge that he should stand clear and clean before God, before Jesus himself, who Paul refers to the fact that Jesus gave good confession before Pontius Pilate. He refers to Jesus' own standing and his own testimony even before the authorities that were standing against him. And remember that this is in an age when the authorities were still seeking to clamp down and to crush Christian faith. And so Paul reminds Timothy to stand firm and to have a clear confession even before authorities that are standing against him. And he blesses God, and he encourages Timothy to continue to look towards him, the one who lives in light unapproachable, to whom be eternal honour and power. And then Paul finishes off this letter just with another word about those who are rich. Now it's interesting here that this means that in the church, because Paul is addressing this, in the church there are people who have money. It's not just poor people in the church, but obviously there are some who are rich. And Paul says if there are people who have goods and they have possessions, they should not be using those to put themselves above others. They're not to think of themselves too highly, not giving their confidence to their possessions and their riches, but actually they should be richer in doing the good works. They have they have the means to share. The rich people have the means to bless others, and so Paul encourages them to continue to bless others, and that's how they will really build up a treasury and a foundation for the future. And then Paul brings the letter to a close by encouraging Timothy to guard what has been entrusted to him, not to get into pointless discussions, and particularly to avoid those that are pursuing what's called gnosis, knowledge. And there's just a little reference here to a movement or a move which is growing, which again is all about having secret knowledge to get through layers of heaven, to get to the God, the true God. And Paul says avoid this, because this is not part of the original good news of Jesus. And he closes by wishing grace upon Timothy. So Paul is very practical in his words here, both about riches and about possessions, but he's also encouraging Timothy to avoid contention, to avoid dissension, and he's calling him to make that good confession. May we today continue to fight that good fight of faith, and may we continue to have a good confession of faith before Jesus. Have a very good October 21st.